And I can see that we've got some questions in the chat. Shall I deal with those first? Right. Janet, you've got a speed watch. Janet, do you want to ask your question? It'll be easier if you ask the question.
Okay, so I run Speedwatch in Buer St Mary, which is a typical Suffolk medieval village with narrow, bendy roads. We have a 30-mile-an-hour limit, but it's a very busy through road. And we've found the 20 Plenty campaign is really divisive. And I'm finding it difficult to field the opposition questions, which are, we have a SID, we have Speedwatch, we have plenty of evidence to show that drivers won't even comply, even in those conditions, with a 30-mile-an-hour limit.
Yeah.
What success will we expect by reducing the speed limit to 20? And that's the sort of argument I'm having to deal with. Yeah,
that's a very common view. I can only say what we can do is we can work with you to show you that the effect of reducing the speed limit just with signs and lines, no engineering enforcement. The Scottish Borders case study is really powerful. So those people who are currently doing 32, 33, 34, 35, they might still be doing 26, 27, but you've got a huge gain of safety. So I think I would ask them to look at the Scottish Borders and other data which we've got as well. So we're very happy to work with you on that.
Okay.
The noise does apply to electric cars, yes, because it's the tyre noise. And actually, EVs are probably worse because they're heavier and they tend to have wider tyres. So actually, the noise problem is exactly the same there. Okay, yes, quiet lane. Okay, that's very interesting. Thank you, Marianne, about the quiet lanes in Suffolk. I'd be interested in knowing the success of quiet lanes actually, because that's the things which I'm interested in for other local authorities. But certainly getting the speed reductions on rural lanes is important. How difficult is it to reduce local road speed limits? John, it's extremely easy if there's political will. It's a traffic regulation order. You can post it tomorrow. If the county councillors and officers are not willing, then they can make it very difficult because they will put all sorts of barriers in your way. But once the will is there to actually embrace 20 as a sort of as a community thing, then it's actually technically very easy to do. And just to go back to Janet's question, I mean, in some cases it may be that you need some additional engineering as well, or some enforcement. But pictures around showing children walking around or whatever can help all that sort of thing. So there are other supporting measures which could be introduced as well. Great. They would not be considering this. Okay, thank you, Kathy. This is the point, is that if each one of you approach Suffolk County Council individually, it's highly likely that they will reject the call for you. They will find a reason why not. If collectively Suffolk as a group do it, it's very difficult to reject. In Kent, I know that one of the reasons the policy changed in Kent to be more supportive of 20 miles an hour, it's not perfect by the way, but it's much better, was that I know the Kent Association of Local Councils as a group, as a body, wrote to KCC and saying, look, we want this, so please can you do this? So that's helped. That's definitely helped. Do it parish by parish is very expensive, absolutely. Because they'll ask you for speed surveys. They will, and indeed in some cases it's done road by road, which is even more expensive because you need a traffic regulation order for every single road. So, for example, if a group of parishes in one area said, hello, we'd like 20 miles an hour for all of our parishes, you could do it on one traffic regulation order. There's no reason why not. So that's the sort of thing where the cost can come down. Right, I've got, hang on a second. Yes, I mean, you could, an open collective letter is certainly one way of progressing. I mean, if that was the feeling of the meeting, then there's no reason why we could, I mean, I'm asking Janice and Gareth whether we could coordinate that. But, you know, it's a bit of effort, but I guess we could do that. That's all right. Suffolk Police. Now the outside schools argument. Well, the problem with that is it depends on what you mean by an outside school. Actually, out at the school gate is about the safest place you could be, because everyone recognises the school, and generally, apart from parking on pavements, but people generally don't drive very fast anyway. What you need is the whole of the child's journey to be safe.
Can I step in there, please? That's my question.
Yes.
So I have spoken to Suffolk Highways. I have spoken to Suffolk County Council. We discussed this at our last parish meeting. And I understand what the benefits will be, but I've been quite categorically told that the Suffolk Police will not support or not police 20-mile-an-hour zones in Suffolk unless they are outside along a school property, which is normally marked by zigzags anyway. So it's fairly clear cut where the 20-mile-an-hour zone, when I say outside school.
Yeah.
Suffolk County Council have said that they have no vested interest in changing this. We live in a fairly fast village, which has grown considerably. When we have SID in the village, we've had speeds in the 30-mile road of over 70 miles an hour.
Yeah.
And that's not just the exception. We can't police and we can't control 30-mile-an-hour. I'm not sure when you've got infrastructure that's really geared up for fast access that people will drive slower. And the other thing as well, I noticed through your survey or your surveys that I don't think I saw any real data on parishes. It was all big cities, Southampton and London and all that kind of thing. So I can't relate your message to my parish.
Okay. Well, I would say Scottish Borders is not that dissimilar to Suffolk. Cornwall is very similar, and they're rolling it out. Oxfordshire,
Cornwall's a very busy tourist area. I've worked on infrastructure in Cornwall, and they are so desperate for summer money that they won't allow any works to go on their roads, highways, etc. during the tourist season. So they have a very bespoke problem, which I don't consider Suffolk to have the same issue. They don't have the road infrastructure that we have in Suffolk. We've got some large major roads. Obviously, in the tourist season, they don't have it down there. So once again, I'm kind of challenging you because I can't relate to anything on a parish level that really you've mentioned.
Oxfordshire, West Sussex.
Oxford, another big city. Yeah, we're not talking about cities here.
No. I'm talking about
everybody on this call is from a village.
I'm talking about the rural areas here.
Yeah,
I understand it's different, absolutely. But I think Scottish Borders is not that dissimilar. If you look there, just to say on the Suffolk video. Sorry, got lots of people. On the Suffolk Police, the role of Suffolk Police is to enforce the law. It is not up to them to decide what the 20-mile-an-hour policy should be. That is Suffolk County Council, and that's up to it's a political decision.
Yeah, I agree. I completely agree. But they don't have the volume capacity to police the 30-mile-an-hour limit we've got in our village. So
correct.
You're saying put 20 in, but it won't be policed.
That's correct. But what you will see is a reduction in speed. You might not get it down to 20, but you will see a reduction in speed.
Not if they're doing 70 mile an hour for a 30, you won't.
Okay, well, there are always the violators, but it's not just because people don't wear seatbelts doesn't mean we should remove the seatbelt.
Well, it's like mobile phones, isn't it? That's a classic. You see mobile phones being used every day, but it's a heavy fine and a heavy penalty, probably more than speeding in a 30.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm just going to quickly go. I've got 3 people wanting to speak, and I've got lots in the chat. Is it legal to display a 2020 sign? Yes, it is, because they are not road signs. If you display the 2020 heart that you can see behind me, that is absolutely legal. Okay. Marianne, did you want to come in?
Yes, I've had quite a lot of experience working with Suffolk County Council highways over the last couple of years. I'm chair of Quiet Lanes Suffolk, and we have now got 300 miles of quiet lanes designated across Suffolk. This has all been very much driven from parish level up and required an awful lot of work by volunteers, but it's been very successful. And unfortunately, tragically, there has been a death very recently on one of the quiet lanes, which we're hoping will help support a 20-mile-an-hour speed limit on all designated quiet lanes. Now, up to now, Suffolk County Council have been very resistant to this, but if we can get a blanket 20-mile-an-hour limit there, then it rather paves the way for perhaps going forward in other areas, or the urban areas within parishes in Suffolk.
Thanks, Marianne. Julia?
Thank you. Here in Woolpit, we've wanted a 20-mile-an-hour limit for some time. As part of our consultation for our neighbourhood plan, it was one of the actions for the parish to take forward. We've had our speed surveys done, but the traffic was moving too fast. And until the parishes can get across to the county that this is about people and not about traffic, because we were told we had to have an average speed of 24 miles an hour or less to be able to have a 20-mile-an-hour zone. That just seems to me to be nonsense. We're now moving on with the help of our lovely county councillor to have a traffic and speed safety appraisal done, which he and we are funding together. And I hope this will begin to show the county council that this is a nonsense. We too are a medieval village with narrow roads and cars parked in awkward places. And our car parking, quite frankly, is our traffic calming. If it wasn't for the parked cars, the traffic speeds would be even higher. And I'm wondering whether, if we all got together, yes, but whether one village ought to be a test case and we ought to just push this as far as we can with them.
Test cases that there are, as I said, there are 28 million people now in the UK living in places which are already 20 miles an hour. So in terms of test cases, I don't know that we need that more. What Suffolk might want to do is, if they accept that 20 miles an hour is the right speed limit where people and motor vehicles mix, then by all means use some examples as to how to implement it, because it's not about whether now, it's about how.
No, I wasn't talking about a test case. I was talking about taking them to court over this.
Oh, I see.
Pushing it as far as we can to say, stop ignoring the people. That this is a nonsense in the 21st century, that cars are given priority over people the whole time.
Yeah, I mean, yes, if you've got the appetite and the resources to do it, yes. What we're finding elsewhere is that once the county council knows that actually it's the entire county and all the communities in the county which are wanting this, that they normally, the county councils will normally fold pretty quickly. So I think it's worth, personally, I think it's worth setting up campaigns, adopting a sort of template resolution that looks exactly the same, and then either collectively one letter, if we can organise that, or individual letters into the highways authorities to say, you know, can they make it, can they add, can they make it default? I'm just, I know that Paul and Richard are wanting to speak. Can I just call Helen, because she thinks that she may be able to add something?
Yeah, I mean, I think that your idea about a test case, I think that I think what the test case that one brings is what's known as an action for judicial review of Surrey County Council's decision not to consider 20 mile per hour speed limit. That's it's very expensive, and it's a lot of hassle, and all it does really is at the end of the court action, even if we're all lucky and we win, it just sends the decision back to Surrey County Council. It doesn't actually implement a decision of 20 miles per hour. So although that's a really great idea, I think actually what we need to do is use some of the really helpful data in this presentation, which are all known as what's known as relevant considerations under administrative law. In particular, you know, the really compelling things about human life, and bring these to Suffolk County Council's attention, you know, the head of highways, copy in maybe the chair of the portfolio holder. And I think, you know, if we're thinking about political leverage, we might want to make it, I said in the chat, an open letter, because there is a kind of embarrassment factor about them then having to reply and say, no, we're not doing it because we don't care about human life. Once they say that, then you can start thinking about whether it's worth going to court. But we don't have the grounds to go to court at the moment. Sorry, I just thought I'd add that because I do administrative law in my day job.
Yeah, I've already taken Mid Suffolk to judicial review. It's not as frightening as you think.
No, but it's very expensive.
But I didn't win. No, it wasn't expensive. But the whole point with Suffolk County Council, you kept saying Surrey. I don't know where your parish is, but
no, I said Suffolk.
You said Surrey.
Apologies, I meant Suffolk. Sorry.
But the point is
just
that the county council doesn't want to spend the money. Now, in Woolpit, we have SIL money. Unfortunately, we're awash in new houses, so we're going to spend the money on things the village needs. And the 20 mile an hour is one of them. The county council is not interested, even if we say it won't cost them a penny. Yeah,
I know. Yeah, we've had the same thing. And we have SIL money too. We have SIL money too. But I think it's about, frankly, I think it's about using potential political embarrassment so that it becomes an easy decision for them. And they do now, they've just entered into a new highways maintenance contract. There is a new portfolio holder for highways. So it may be worth, you know, having another go at knocking at the door, frankly.
I've got a couple of other people that want to speak. I was just going to say that I was going to add that West Sussex, although they passed the policy, which is much more flexible, and I can send you a link to that. They have not promised more money, so it's going to be up to communities to find money, at least for now. So if Suffolk are concerned that it's a money thing, then but actually it's very cheap. It's incredibly cheap. It's sort of £5 to £10 per person, which is nothing. But if they're still worried about money, then they can always have the policy and say we won't fund this yet, and then you can talk about that later on. I'm just going to ask Paul to come in, and then Richard.
Thanks, Adrian. Yes, so we're in the touristy part of the Suffolk coast, and I'm really interested to hear the very different experiences that people have, because we've worked very hard with the county council to introduce some safety measures around our school, which is right in the middle of a long, straight 30 mile an hour section of road, which runs right through the middle of our village down to Snake Maltings, for those who know this area. we've had some success with them with the county highways in introducing various safety measures, including extending the school safety zone, the 20s plenty school safety zone, to a longer stretch of the road, which has been good. But when it comes to any enforceable limit, they won't consider it. And that's where I think I'd be really interested to work with others on this call to really get to grips with the county council, because certainly locally here, people, for all the reasons expressed, particularly not so much road safety actually, because we haven't had too many problems with that so far, thank goodness, but the noise and the disruption to people using the village effectively, being able to move from the village hall to the post office, from the shop to the pub, you know, that people cannot move around the village properly. And the comment from somebody about this is about people, not about cars, I think that's absolutely right. It's about creating a village that is genuinely workable and movable through. So I'm really keen to support anything that people on the call would like to do.
Fantastic. That's really helpful, Paul. It's got Richard and then John.
Yeah, can I just ask a quick question, not directly about the 20 mile an hour, but the buffer zones that you talked about, and where you're directly coming from the national speed limit into an area where you consider you might want 20 plenty. What sort of buffer zones do you look at, and how far away have these been implemented elsewhere? Okay,
so I mean, from a legal point of view, you could go from 60 to 20. We wouldn't recommend that. Because you don't, but it's less effective, and it also, you know, it's just not right. So it's different people are doing different things. It depends entirely on the layout of your community, you know, and it might be a few hundred meters of 30 miles an hour, or it might even be 40 miles an hour. It just depends on how your area looks. But certainly having a very clear, this is one of the things that Oxfordshire is working hard on, is to make sure the transition point is in the right place. So there's no point in having 20 miles an hour on a wide straight road 2 miles away from any houses, but you need it before you get to the school in the middle of the village. So that getting the transition point from the higher speed to the lower speed is really important. So there are other signals around for the driver. Having a very clear gateway into the 20 mile area is also important. And then probably putting some buffer zones of 30 or 40 for a few hundred meters around the outside. John.
Well, I was very pleased that RPC adopted your motion without really any serious problems. What was interesting was the farmers were just as much in favour of it as the people who live in the houses in the village. So I think there's quite a lot going for it. I mean, we live on mostly on a bean road, which is only 6 meters wide in a few places. Right. You can imagine what it's like with lorries, which we have many of, going along our roads. The police do speed checks and they do prosecute people, but that doesn't stop them. Indeed, the police are one of the worst offenders, I think, although I don't have a speed camera myself. But certainly my experience in London, where I lived in Lewisham, was the 20 mile an hour speed limit dropped the average speed from about 35 down to 24 on the non-main roads very quickly. Yeah. And it was all the roads except places like the South Circular Road and the main arterial roads going into London. And that initially there was a lot of grumbling, but people now seem to have accepted it. Nobody hoots you when you do 20 miles an hour anymore. So I think it is a culture change.
Yes, it's definitely a culture change. It's absolutely right, John. There's nothing magical about 30. There's nothing magical about 20 either, actually. Although there are biological reasons why 20 miles an hour is safe and 30 isn't. But I agree. It is about the cultural change, and that's why it's important to band together. Because if you go through one village and it's 40. And you go through a village which is almost identical, 2 miles down the road, and it's suddenly 20. We say, what's going on? Is it 20? Is it 40? Is it 30? So having some consistency of approach is actually very important. So are there any more questions or points that I've missed, either in the chat? Janet, you were saying, I'm very happy to do one-to-ones with you for individual district or county councillors. That would be very helpful, if that would be helpful. I get a feeling of that overall we'd like a sort of joint approach. It's a question of I guess how we organise that. Joanne, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I'm just going to echo what you said, Adrian. I'm clerk actually to 5 parishes, all of which have speeding as one of their biggest issues. The only way to get any change is if we all act together and lobby collectively, but it has to be actually both the police and Suffolk County Council, because as I said in one of my chats, we've encountered resistance from both of them.
Yes.
I don't know if anybody remembers the NATS, National Air Traffic Service thing in several years ago in West Suffolk, where they were going to put a holding area over Newmarket. 100 parishes joined together, and I mean obviously the racing industry got involved as well, but it was quashed because of the power of the voice of local parishes. And I felt for a long time we all need to join together and maybe have a meeting like this and invite the police and Suffolk County Council along, because they're actually very reluctant to engage with us on a personal level. But if enough people ask, maybe then actually they might do it.
Okay. What would also be helpful is if people on the court have no individuals within the county council or the police, to find out actually the real reasons, because everything I've heard so far, from various places, is there aren't real objections. There are sort of theoretical objections. So if it's a money thing, well, go down the West Sussex route. If it's an enforcement thing, well, actually, I mean, enforcement's going to go away because every car's going to have speed limiters in soon. So we know the direction of travel. It's just a question of really helping Suffolk to join the other local authorities which are doing this. Janet.
Hello, sorry, I was typing at the same time there.
Well done.
Me multitasking. Yes, I just wanted to say thank you all so much actually for coming along in response to the email that we sent out. I'm one of the few coordinators at the moment, and it's lovely to hear from Newmarket that you actually have adopted the motion. Sorry to hear the response from Suffolk County Council. But one of the things, and also thank you for your offer of support and help as well to coordinate. We do have sort of coordination facilities, if you like, as long as people come back to us through the 20s Plenty email address to let us know what you're doing. John from Cookley and Walpole asked a bit earlier on in the chat how many people have adopted the motion. And we know that as the parish council meetings are coming along, people are adopting the motion. We heard another one in the Lowestoft area, actually, who may have done that yesterday. But we do need that information back so that we can build this bigger picture, because this is very much about a collective endeavour. It is very much about people, as everybody was saying. It is around how we feel in the environment that we live in, how we're able to live our lives. And there's even research actually that residential areas on really busy roads, there is a lot less social interaction going on amongst people who live there. And so there is all sorts of mental well-being, mental health and mental well-being things that are there too. So I suppose that's just what I want to say. There is what we will do is, for everybody who's on the call today, we will be sending out a thank you email. We will send out the link again. I can see that Ruth has asked about that. So we'll make sure that the link to the motion is there in a Word document, actually, to make it a bit easier for you as well. One piece of news is that we know the East Anglian Daily Times are very interested. We know that in supporting and promoting this campaign, it then is about what might we tell them? Do we tell them how many people came on the webinar? Do we tell them how many parish councils have started to adopt this? We need some news, don't we, really? So I don't know, Adrian, what your thoughts are around that. And actually my comment in the chat about the district and county councillors was, Adrian, whether we would do one of these for district and county councillors now. We haven't sent them the information that you got as parish councils, but we are sort of working our way up the hierarchy. There's a lot more of us at parish level to be able to start to put pressure on to the slightly higher levels. But if you have really supportive district councillors and county councillors, we would love to hear from them. Okay, I think that's probably enough from me.
One thing I didn't put down there is I think that when letters go in and we need to identify who we should send a letter to, but I think it should definitely include your local county and district councillors, so they're aware of the support in the community. Yes, Phil, I can. We can have the slides. To anything we send out. Just to Janet, can you remind me when the date is for the next one? Is it the 28th? Yeah. So the next.
Yes, it's the 28th, Wednesday.
The next webinar is the 28th. We're doing it in the evening because we know that some people prefer evening meetings rather than daytime. So if you know other people who think would be willing, would find it useful, please let them know. Or if you want to come again and hear the same thing again, if you're a glutton for punishment, please do that as well. Is there anything else we need to do, Janet, today? Is there any other comments or questions? Paul?
Just a quickie. I mean, one of the things, of course, that there is supposedly this change in the balance of power between cars and on the one hand and pedestrians and cyclists on the other. The county council are just as unwilling to make sure that footpaths where they exist and pavements where they exist are properly cleared as they are to think about speed limits. So they're not really interested in at the moment. They don't appear to have taken on board this change in the balance of importance, and that's something that we really need them to get to grips with. I know many villages don't even have footways of any sort. Where they do exist, they're very narrow, and people have to walk in the road and risk being run over by somebody going past at 60 miles an hour.
And that's actually one of the reasons why 20 miles an hour is important, because where you don't have footpaths, then the speeds need to come down. Absolutely. I mean, it should be interesting to know what Suffolk's views on the highway code changes, because those highway code changes say they've got to consider vulnerable road users first. I've got Julia and then John.
I was interested then that Paul said a change in the balance of power between cars and pedestrians. What about the change in balance of power generally in politics in this county? We in Mid Suffolk are already agreeing. I think there are a lot of county councillors out there who fear for their seats. And if they don't react on basic people politics, they're going to be in trouble. So this might be a time to appeal to their better sides, shall we say.
I agree, Julie. With just to emphasise, 2020 is absolutely and utterly apolitical. We work and support people, councillors and local authorities of all colours. But I am sensing that as well. Exactly that point that there are many councillors who are saying, "Oh dear, maybe we do need to think differently." And I don't blame councillors the way they're thinking, because a lot of us have been thinking that way for decades and decades. But things are changing, and I agree that timing-wise, it's really good. I assume you've got county council elections in 2025.
I think so.
So actually, this is a really good time to be demonstrating that. It gives us time to ramp up, because if you do it at the last minute, then it's too late. So.
Our current police and crime commissioner lost his Mid Suffolk District Council seat to a Green.
Okay.
So his county council seat's probably in jeopardy as well.
John.
Yes, it's a minor point, but if you reduce the speed at which vehicles go along, there are fewer smaller potholes, which will save the money in the long run.
Yeah, indeed. John, do you mean in, so John Horsnell, do you mean in Suffolk, or do you mean nationally?
Sorry, yes, in Suffolk, are there any real successes with the speed reduction in villages? And can anybody talk about real success that they've had, other than around schools? I know that it's very active around schools and children going to school. Other than in generally in the village, in villages.
I mean, I don't know if there's anybody else on the call can do this. I don't know what Janet's or Gareth's view is, but my suspicion is that because of the policy that Suffolk have got, it's really, really hard. And that's the thing that needs to change. Once you have sort of the county council saying embracing 20 miles an hour, then you get a completely different story.
Yes, yeah.
If it's just put in one place outside of school or on one street, reluctantly, then people say, "Oh, what's all this about?" Once you get the policy changed and embracing 20 miles an hour, then suddenly people, "Oh, I see. Oh, we're trying to help school children here. We're trying to help elderly people cross the road." Oh, I see.
Yes,
get it.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah.
And that public engagement is really, really important. Saying why it's important. If it's seen, if it's seen as I want to drive down here and I'm being stopped from getting to my place of work by a bit, then it doesn't work. If it's seen as an enabler of communities and stopping villages being annoyances on getting from place A to place B, which a lot of villages are seen as that, then it becomes a different story. So that engagement piece is really important.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so Janet, I think, so first of all, I think what we're going to do is we're going to have the webinar next week. I think then what we'll do is we'll have a campaign to sort of wrap up afterwards for your colleagues, and anybody on the call who would like to join that and actually actively campaign and work on this, please let Janet know. And then I think we need to sort of, get a sort of a group of people going and get sort of combined push forward together. Have I summarised that properly, or is that okay?
I think that sounds fine. Yes.
Okay, great. So there'll be a bit of a hiatus for a week or so before we have the next webinar, and then once we've got, I think, Janet, probably we should just send out a combined email to everybody so we've got everybody's views for following the next webinar. Is that okay?
Yes, if we can say that. So a combined email will come towards the end of next week to everybody.
And in the meantime, if you've got any further questions, if you write to 20splenty.suffolk@gmail.com, it should get to some of us. And please go on the 20splenty website if you want resources or anything else. There's lots and lots of information there and lots of resources, which are, some of them are free, some of them you have to pay for, I'm afraid, but it's pretty good.